Hi, my name's Nick Broughton and I'm a Randomfish. Hit that subscribe button and let's be Randomfishes together, shall we? Now, something that I've been thinking a lot of is obviously British TV shows, and I have reviewed a couple of them while on this channel. And while not many people have watched these shows, or not many people have reviewed these shows on YouTube, I honestly feel like I want to, because it's something from my childhood that I really did enjoy, and something I really did embrace. I mean, you know, to a point where kids' TV shows were on in the afternoon, in the middle of the day, and then on Saturday mornings, not all the time, like all channels seem to have now, which is very weird. But anyway, one of the shows that I found myself watching quite a lot of as a child was a show called The Story of Tracy Beaker. This show was, how do I put this? It was integral to my life. I am not even kidding. The show itself was this collective experience of pain, suffering, and yet complete and utter brilliance, all at the same time. The show focused on a little girl called Tracy Beaker, who has spent her life going in and out of various foster homes and returning back to a place called the Dumping Ground. In this place, she is surrounded by people who she thinks are friends, who are okay with her for the most part, but do have issues with her, given the fact that she is a very confrontational, a very antagonistic person. But here's the fun bit. The actual emotional connection she feels with these other characters is so very real, and it's so very believable, and you do find yourself very much wanting her to have a decent relationship with these people. And over the years, this show lasted approximately 5 seasons. Possibly 6, I can't remember entirely off the top of my head, but I believe it's 5 seasons. During this time period, it was incredibly fun to watch, and while I was going through secondary school, or high school, if you Americans are watching this video, for me, anger was a severe issue of mine, and it was nice, really, to see a show where the main character had the same issue, where she was not a very happy person, and she was prone to lashing out at people for absolutely no reason. And it was a very real thing, it was a very real concept to see, and it was nice. The situations, the reasons around the situations were completely different between the two of us, but the emotional turmoil was still there, and it was still nice to see as a concept. Tracy herself is played by the actress Dani Harmer. Now, I will always sing Dani Harmer's praises, because frankly, the whole show, I feel, encompasses this thing of good child actors. I'm actually not kidding. This was one of the first shows outside of anything that I saw where I truly found myself enjoying the acting from the kids. I really did, and it felt more real in this than anything else. A lot of child actors do fall flat on their face when they perform. They do. And this is not a slight against child actors, that's just a fact of nature. Some shows, they cannot hold up, especially if they're the main character. The only times I've ever seen this truly not happen is with Tracy Beaker, and possibly with the Chronicles of Narnia. Because the kids in that one were just amazing with their acting. It was great. The main one, of course, on that focus being the girl who played Lucy in that. But in this show, you had some amazing child actors. You had Tracy Beaker, obviously played by Dani Harmer, but you had these other characters too. You had the other two main girls in the show were called Louise and Justine. Justine was Tracy's rival throughout the run of the show. And it kind of was amazing, because every time she turned up in the show, even if she'd left, and then when she came back, Tracy's exact reaction was Justine Littlewood. Complete venom spitting out of her mouth whenever she said the name. It was beautiful. But while they never became best friends, there was that sense of respect and that sense of decency between the two of them, that they knew that the other one, while they fought a lot, they were still very much the same. They had the same connection for them, and it was nice to have that as an emotional connection between these two characters. The reason for them being both in care is not exactly the same, but it's very similar. Justine's father is in actuality a very busy man, and he is either divorced or his wife is dead. It's something like that, and Justine cannot be looked after by him on his own because he is too busy at work, and he doesn't have necessarily the resources or the money to hire a full-time nanny. So to that end, Justine ends up in care, and her dad still comes by to see her, but the system is taking care of Justine whilst the dad is trying to get his stuff together. For Tracy, it's a little bit different. Her mum is a wannabe actress, which we of course find out as a fact in the feature-length film A Movie of Me. In that, you understand that her mum is a struggling actress or a wannabe actress who is attempting to have her big break, but it never actually happens. And during all the time she's gone off for auditions, or whenever she's gone off to have casting parties or anything else like that where she's trying to be famous, she has left Tracy on her own in a flat. And it's so cool to see the way this is handled. I will always defend kids shows for the way they portray certain aspects. In Tracy Beaker Indefinitely, there's this beautiful thing that Tracy does where she will always come up with this big story of what her mum used to do. In her head, her mum is this big-time famous movie star who has gone off to have these big movies with these big celebrities, and that's why she can't look after Tracy. And that's why she's stuck in the dumping ground. But the second her mum has had her film out, and the way that when she gets all the money, she'll come back, take Tracy away from the dumping ground, and they live happily ever after forever in the sunset. And after that flashback, after that little sort of thing happens, you get a real flashback of Tracy on her own in the flat, where the door shuts behind her with absolutely nothing. And Tracy has no idea where her mum has gone. To the point where she is literally alone, surrounded by all this stuff that needs to be done by an adult, and she is a kid. She is a child. And she doesn't understand, and she doesn't need to understand. She just knows that she needs someone to look after her. And it's so very unique to have that in a show, especially in that time period. For me, kid shows nowadays have this thing where they're trying to make the kids equal to the adults on an emotional level, trying to make the kids more grown up than the adults. And while that is a thing, and that is something that's very interesting on that, it's not really... I'm not going to say it's not very realistic, but it isn't always that realistic for everyone. Some kids do have the emotional capacity to stand alongside their parents. But for some of us, myself included when I was that age, we did not. We made up a lot of stuff. We tried to keep ourselves on the same level, but it never actually happened. We never found ourselves on the same emotional level as our parents, so we made stuff up. We made shit up, people. And that's legitimate for a lot of this. I think that's very real. And just a whole bunch of other stuff that just really happens over the course of the show, and it's just... I have favourite characters and favourite episodes, which I'm going to go into. Louise and Justine I already mentioned alongside Tracy. You've also got her two other best friends that appear from season 3 onwards for the final season, called Crash and Jackie. Jackie is a wannabe Olympic runner whose granddad used to run in the Olympics and is now suffering from dementia. Jackie's parents are MIA, we never see them in the show, and her granddad's the one who raised her. And Jackie is constantly trying to get back to her granddad, despite the fact that she knows he's suffering from dementia, but she doesn't care. And she's very much in denial and thinks he's going to get better very quickly. Crash is someone who's gone to care because his dad is abusive and has anger issues. Again, much like Tracy, and Crash himself has developed anger issues because of it, to the point where he breaks stuff whenever he gets angry. And you get all of this stuff that just happens, and Crash... Remember when I said that Tracy had a vivid imagination to the point where she created this little idea that her mum was this famous actress? This all played in animation in her head. And that animation was so well done and looked so much like the cover of the book of the original story of Tracy Beaker that was written by Jacqueline Wilson. They've carried that over into the future shows to the point where you actually do have other versions of the characters looking in their animated forms, and it's really quite cool to see. But anyway, my point is that when you see this kid thinking about his dad losing his temper, you see him legitimately in animation, glowing red, turning into a giant bear, ripped clothes, and just roaring at Crash and making him go smaller and smaller and smaller until he poofs away into nothingness. And then you get the same thing, but with Crash in place of it, and you see Tracy getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and poof, while he turns into a giant bear and goes rah a lot. And it's so more interesting to see, because the one thing that people seem to have forgotten about a visual medium is show, don't tell. And it feels to me as though these kids are trying to explain all this stuff to adults about how they feel left out, how they feel like they should be treated more like adults. Why not do that through a visual medium like animation? Because that, to me, is the perfect symbolism for a lot of it. And it's great to see as a story arc, and it's great to see as all of that. In terms of my favourite episodes, there's episodes where Tracy meets this boy in the very first season. Tracy meets this boy called Ben, who she thinks is on the run. And Ben has been lying to her the whole time. And he actually does have parents, but his parents are incredibly rich, but they don't care. And they don't really spend that much time with him. And he's feeling all left out and all upset about it and blah, blah, blah. So he befriends someone like Tracy, who is essentially a kid in care and who is essentially got no parents. Not really, technically speaking, because her mum is MIA all the time. But he gravitates to her because they share a lot of the same structures, a lot of the same belief systems. And it is very real to see. Another great one is when Cam herself, Tracy's future foster mum, when at the end of the very first season, when Cam actually does adopt Tracy, when she actually does foster Tracy, there's just this brilliant thing where everyone is trying very hard not to be emotional about Tracy leaving, because everyone's always going, oh, Tracy Beaker, she does these horrible things, she's a horrible person, blah, 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 blah. But in the very last season, there's legitimately this thing where they do actually give enough of a crap. And while, on the camera wise, when they're all hugging each other and saying goodbye, they're not all very huggy. A couple of them are, but not that many. But you can tell it's this legitimate thing where they are actually happy for her, and they're not just stood there with absolutely no real desire to see her, desire to sort of really care that she's leaving. Because Tracy is very much the character where she doesn't get a lot of breaks. That leads me into the movie, actually. The movie about me is one where, in the second to third season, Cam puts Tracy back in the dumping ground. She honestly doesn't feel like she can cope with Tracy because of the way Tracy is and how boisterous she is and how inquisitive she is and just how much of a unintentional prankster she is. When she tries, she's great, but even when she's not trying, she still manages to pull something off pretty spectacular. So Cam puts her back in the dumping ground because she can't handle her. And that's the way it is throughout those two seasons. And then, come the movie of me, Cam wants her back in her life. And she wants to re-foster her. And Tracy, of course, is 100% on board for this. Because over the next couple of seasons, over those two seasons, Cam doesn't disappear completely. She does come back. They do have conversations. They are still friends. They do still love each other. Tracy still wants to live with her. But Cam hasn't quite figured everything out yet. So that's where a lot of it comes from. And in the movie, when Cam does actually suggest that she re-fosters Tracy, Tracy is, of course, 100% on board for this. And then, as I pointed out before with the mum, Tracy's mother does come back. And it's this wonderful thing of Tracy finally being able to reconnect with her mum, finally being able to sort of really be with her again. And it's great, and it's lovely, and it's wonderful, and her mum very much tries to treat her like a grown-up, i.e. letting her do things for herself, i.e. leaving her alone in the flat. Again, doing the same thing that she pulled last time, except she's doing it under the guise of the fact that now Tracy's older, she can look after herself more. Which is kind of true, but at the same time, it's not. And there's a wonderful line where Tracy gives at the very end of it, where she says, but I'm not a kid. but I'm not a grown-up. I am a kid. I need someone to look after me. And Cam is there, and she trusts Tracy, and she knows Tracy, but she also knows that Tracy needs constant looking after and constant care and constant sort of a real mother, really. And it's such an emotional thing to see, and it's so well done. Because the mother, despite her being upset about this, knows that it's the right thing to do. And she knows that Cam is the right person to look after Tracy. And she does legitimately just do the whole take good care of her moment. And I know this is a show about foster care and all this sort of thing, and there's no way that on any kind of personal level could I ever connect to this, but it's so freaking good. And it's so well done, and it's so well acted, and yes, I love it. One of my other favourite episodes is, the last one I'm going to talk about, is when Jackie is introduced, and you kind of get introduced more to Crash. Jackie turns up by being dragged into the place by a character called Elaine Boyack. Now, she has been there from the first season with the nickname of Elaine the Pain. Yep, that's her real name, people. You will call her that. No matter how many times she says Elaine Boyack, it's always Elaine the Pain. There is nothing else there. But she brings in this character called Jackie, who is, you know, like I said, Jackie's always trying to get back to her grandpa, and she's constantly running away from the dumping ground. And Elaine has no idea of how to deal with it, and she has no idea how to make Jackie stay put. And Sid, the new head care worker at the time, tells Elaine that they will do their best to contain her, to keep her safe and keep her happy. Now, there's a character in the show in one, maybe 2 seasons, I think, called Michael, who is possibly there's no character that I've ever wanted to punch in the face more so than him. He is annoying. He is an annoying little spit of a character. I want to kill him, so much so I want to kill him. He constantly mocks Crash and constantly mocks Jackie, and it's very annoying very quickly, and you just know whenever he turns up, stuff's just going to go sideways. He is essentially a character who has been screwed over so much. You can tell why he's like that. From the very fact that the one episode you do see where his brother turns up, you can kind of automatically understand why he is the way he is. But it doesn't mean that he's a bad, he's not a bad kid, but he does so many bad things that you just want to kill him for it. But you know that you can't because he's so damaged, and it's... he's more annoying than Tracy, is my best way of fighting him, actually. He's more an antagonistic than Tracy. Which I never thought I'd ever see in the real world, I'll be honest. But at one point you get Jackie trying to want to run away, you get Crash trying to break things, you get the understanding of how Crash makes other people feel with his anger and his issues. And Tracy inevitably connects with Jackie on a very strong level because much like Tracy, Jackie is trying like hell to recapture something that is never going to be recaptured. And while Tracy gets a brief glimpse of this in the movie of Me, this is after she meets Jackie. So Tracy is more or less slightly more painfully aware that she believes her mother is never actually coming back. And she is stuck in the dumping ground for better or for worse. And she chooses to sort of impart this wisdom to Jackie because... not because she's a good person, but because Tracy on her own, I think, is not the worst character in the world to have that story told. Because she is trying her best. And I think it's very cool. If you haven't watched this show, first of all, shame on you. But second of all, if you are someone who doesn't mind this, read the book, possibly. Jacqueline Wilson. Now, I haven't read it, so I don't know how much of it is connected to either the first season, because that's what it is. The book is connected to the first season. The other seasons beyond that in the TV show is completely only for TV. The books do not go any further, at least not to my knowledge. However, in terms of comparing the books to the TV shows, I don't know about that. If you want to see someone comparing books to TV, check out Lost in Adaptation from the Dom. I may put a link in the description below. You may just have to look up Lost in Adaptation on YouTube. It's not that hard to find. But honestly, I think if I'm going to recommend anything from this, I would recommend watching the show as much as you can. There are DVDs released if you're in the UK. I don't know if it's in the US, but it is in the UK. Go out and find them. Find a movie of me. Find all of these things. Tracy Beaker is an amazing show, an amazing cast. It's so well acted. It's so well done. The only other character that I could ever really talk about is a character called Layla. You get some amazing episodes with her on her own, with her friends, and she's a fun character. And honestly, I'm going to leave it like that because I want you to go check out the series for itself. I want you to go check it all out. You even get a young Craig David, I think it is, in this, who plays one of the characters in the show. The guy who would go on to be in Submarine, or who would go on to be in Young Dracula later on in the run. Craig Roberts is his name, not Craig Davids. What the hell am I talking about? Craig Roberts. And honestly, just check out the show. Alright, my people? Randomfish out.